To help us unpack and make sense of some of these events, we've roped in some respected rugby journalists. Khanyiso, Tshwaku and Sibusiso, Mjikeliso are with us this morning to talk about it. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me to make sense of all of this, because I'm standing in for V this morning, so you guys have got to make this understandable. So, Khanyiso, I'm going to come to you. Let's start with the United Rugby Championship, where, unfortunately, the Stormers did very well, I say, against they held their nerve against a highly motivated Bulls team. So this victory is made sweeter by the fact that the men from the Cape have endured a terrible time off the field. I mean, they've lost Springboks, but the end of it all, they seem to restore their pride with results on the field. Talk to us about that.
Look, it has taken them 23 years to get to where they are. One needs to remember that back in May 1999, the Stormers were the first South African team to host a Super Rugby semi-final, to finish the top two. And in the build-up to that, the Reds had actually lost the Crusaders, meaning which they had an opportunity to host the final. But there was an unfortunate player strike at the time that unsettled the players to a point where they ended up losing to the Highlanders. And that started a cycle of disappointment that was only just broken once in 2010 when they beat the Waratahs in a semi-final at home when the tournament moved from the Super 12 to the Super 14. But in between that, them in playoffs weren't very good bedfellows. I mean, they lost two consecutive playoffs to the Chiefs in 2016 and 2017. One of them was actually quite a hiding, 60 points to 21. If you've been looking what has been happening off the field for the Stormers over the past 2.5 to 3 years, it hasn't been pretty for them. The administrative body, the Western Province Rugby Football Union, is under administration at the moment. So for them to pick themselves up off the canvas in the manner that they did, to 3 consecutive playoffs at home, something they could not have managed in over 23 years. Just looking at that particular historic period just speaks volumes for what they've achieved under John Dobson as a group, as a union. So it has been probably the most collective, the most wonderful collective effort. I mean, Jake White, the Bulls Director of Rugby, spoke of a fairy tale story that the Bulls were competing in the Currie Cup semi-final. They were in the final, but the bigger fairy tale story is that from where they were, the Stormers have achieved probably the unthinkable. And by winning that major trophy, they've broken a 23-year spell where they were simply unable to win a major playoff. And across a portion of 3 weekends, they broke their hood. They beat a Scottish side, they beat an Irish side, they beat a South African side. So, I mean, one can't begrudge them that success based on what they did over the past 3 weekends.
Wow, interesting. So, Spoo, let me come to you now. And if we stay with matters off the field now, what is the latest with regards to the sale of Newlands Rugby Stadium? Western Province have migrated to the Cape Town Stadium, but it seems that their old stomping ground is involved in some legal wrangling as well. What's going on with the sale?
The latest, hurdle is the application by Bernard Claassen and 3 others to have Newlands Rugby Stadium declared a heritage site. So they put in that application with the Western Cape government, but they're willing to take it up with the national government as well, but they have to start there according to the paperwork involved in all of that. Now, this is a stumbling block because the administrator, SA Rugby's appointed administrator, Rian Oberholt, had actually told us that they're actually making headway in terms of finding, suitable buyers for their estates that the Western Province Rugby Football Union actually own, including Newlands. Those properties were valued at over 500 million. But because the province got itself into a mess, a legal mess, which includes, the Flight property deal that went south, there could be some litigation there. They successfully asked Flight to pause their litigation until the sales are complete, which is a victory because, having all the legal pile-up happening at the same time would have been incredibly difficult to put through the sale. The other tough part is they're also trying to get an equity partner. So now you've got 2 entities that have to run concurrently. It's the amateur union, which is Western Province Rugby Football Union, and Western Province Rugby Professional, Western Province Professional Rugby, which is the professional arm, as the name says. So that runs Stormers. Although Western Province Rugby Football Union is 100% shareholder in the Stormers, they're trying to sell those shares to a private equity partner as well.
Yeah.
Now, the Stormers winning the URC, now that puts the cat amongst the pigeons, because it means that an equity partner coming in might have gotten them at the cheap because they were in dire straits, but now they're buying a championship winning team. So now the bargaining chip is a little on the side of South African rugby, if I can put it that way. There's a little more to bargain for, and there's actually something to sell out there.
Sure.
A winning team and a brand that's gotten itself back on the pedestal where I think it belongs.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's move on to another issue, because there's quite a bit to get through. So teams have a massive upgrade, the 8 teams out there, and will be playing their rugby with the best of the United Kingdom and France. And we're talking Cheetahs also get a backdoor entry into the United Rugby Championship. So at face value, this is great for us, but it's the level below which has many reasons to worry, I suppose. Should those playing in the Currie Cup be worried about the tournament being devalued? I mean, Khanyiso, do you want to take this one?
Look, they shouldn't. If you looked at the kind of arrangement that the Sharks and the Cheetahs actually had, that they were able to loan out players to the Sharks to actually play. I mean, there's also another Cheetahs player in Thelma Arnold. They actually got some game time for the Stormers. So, I mean, the Cheetahs are now playing in the Challenge Cup, where you've got along with the Lions, and then you've got the 3 other teams playing in the URC, in the URC, the Heineken Champions Cup. The pool draw takes place next week, so we'll actually see who they will be playing. I mean, the one thing that we actually that at Sport 24 reported on is the fact that the financial value of actually participating in the in those European competitions may not be seen now, but I think it also allows the South African teams to mix and match their resources, because I mean, you find that there are a number of excellent players at franchises like your Pumas, your Pumas and your Griquas, are actually playing in this Saturday's Currie Cup final, who may be of value for a team like the Cheetahs, a team like the Lions, when it comes to those particular tournaments, where you may realize now that instead of actually being in opposite corners, they may need to work hand in hand in terms of actually giving players exposure and actually helping to sort out the depth issue. Because if you're going to be playing, for example, if you're the Cheetahs and the Lions, you're going to be playing URC. I'll use the Lions as an example. You'll be playing URC, you'll be playing Currie Cup, you'll be playing the Challenge Cup. I mean, if you looked at how threadbare the Lions were at a Currie Cup perspective, I mean, they finished last, only won 2 games the entire season. You start to realize that if you can't manage your own depth alone, you may need to look elsewhere. I mean, the Pumas then become such a viable alternative for them in terms of actually saying, look, we may be on opposite sides in the Currie Cup, but can we work hand in hand in the Challenge Cup to ensure that if we are short on players on a specific match week, then we can actually move along and actually work hand in hand, that we actually get players from you guys. I mean, if that loan system between the Cheetahs and the Sharks actually worked well for them during the Rainbow Cup, and one can't see it not working, especially for European rugby, because I think now what becomes important is now that the dates for the European tournaments have now been set, it now stands to see when the Currie Cup will be played, because as we now see that rugby it will become summer sport in South Africa, with the season starting in September, ending in May. So now that balance is going to be very tricky.
Yeah. All right. Final questions, Bud. Just a very quick one, if we can squeeze it in. I mean, South Africa's talent pool grows at a daily rate, and we saw the Davids beating the Goliaths in the Currie Cup. Is this enough to sustain competitions like the Currie Cup? One might fear that as a commercial entity, the oldest tournament in South African rugby could be in trouble. And it seems like a classic of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer brewing.
I think this is symptomatic of all professional sports, if I'm honest. In football, they always cry about the FA Cup getting devalued, for the big money Champions Leagues and what have you. But in South Africa, I think because of our talent pool, it's impossible not to have an FA Cup or a tournament of that kind and that stature operating in South African rugby. Look at how much talent we export on a regular basis. Look at what our teams are doing in the United Rugby Championship. Look at the Springboks and look at the schools and Varsity Cup. There is a wealth of talent in South Africa. Right now, they're going to have 3 months off before the next URC takes place. I think this would be a great opportunity to squeeze in a tournament like the Currie Cup. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of rescheduling in terms of what happens next year, but I think it's impossible. I think it would be a crying shame if we did away with the Currie Cup, because this is what makes South African rugby strong. It's the fact that we have competitions like this, and we don't abandon our rugby at whatever structure. Look at club rugby in this country, how vibrant it is, how great it is when. Back before COVID, when people could come out, I remember people coming on horses, coming to see club rugby matches. On Monday nights, when Marty's play Ikes, look at how many kids are in the stands watching the game. So people want to see rugby, and people are used to the traditional structures of rugby. And now they've bought into the URC. It's just another layer which we needed to have to feed this growing and effervescent rugby structure that we have. That is, nowhere else in the world has what we have in terms of rugby structures.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do away with that.
I hope so. Well, let's see. Guys, thanks so much for talking to me this morning. It's been a real pleasure just chatting about all things rugby. Khanyiso, Tshwaku and Sibusiso, Mjikeliso, talking to us about all things about rugby.